Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Hooky's MTA Primer, where this week we're going to be talking about the biggest terror this game has ever known. A force so terrible that it may have permanently scarred and damaged MTA's reputation as a competitively viable game, but I'm here to show that things are not as bad as they seem, that perhaps this terror has died down. This week, we are talking about Bowser Jr. And here we are, as always, on the character select screen. This time I think I'm going to pick Mario, just for the lore matchup, of course, as you do. Junior's biggest nightmare. This monster terrorizing his dad every day. But we're about to get a little terrible on the court. In the worst ways possible, so. First thing to note about Bowser Jr., what strengths does he have? Well, two very defined things. One, his reach is very good, as you would expect from a defensive. There you can see I'm not really doing too much work to actually catch these shots. Just generally maintaining myself on center court. And the second thing is that Junior's a floaty, which means I just naturally, if I'm holding charge, will just go for the ball. Which is two very good things. Two essentials in making sure that your defense game is pretty good as this character. Unfortunately, though, that's about where the strengths end. Because, as wide of a reach that Bowser Jr. has, and as much as he can charge to get over to shots, it doesn't really matter too much when his shots don't have much power behind them, and it just takes forever to get to that charging point, where a lot of characters might just naturally have fast-hitting shots, like your slice volleyers, like Peach, who will just be able to belt out those slices, or your PT, or your Spike, who just naturally have good flats. Bowser Jr. has to charge up all of his shots. Which isn't a bad thing in Standard, don't get me wrong. Charging your shots in Standard is very good. Always going to be good because of that meter game. But it just means that Junior gets less of an advantage for charging his shots than other characters do by just simply mashing. You can see right here that these slices from the center court, if I'm ever playing a T game, they're not going to be threatening. They do not go very fast. So a lot of characters can just naturally pressure Junior off that net, off that T position. They're not going to be threatened in return by Junior just camping the net, or the T, I should say, because he simply doesn't hit a fast shot from here. And he's more vulnerable to an angle going past him here than he is at the baseline. So Junior doesn't really have too much pressure from this point. Even my top spins, if you charge your top spins, typically you will get a lot of reward for it if you can find those opportunities. But Junior's doesn't really go that fast. In fact, I would almost say it's one of the worst top spins in the game. So much so that Camelot even had to buff it in like one of the final patches they released for this game. And it's still bad. So that's what we're working with here with this former terror of the court. And another thing is that his angles are not good. So you get no pressure playing up right here because your angles are not good. A lot of characters are going to be able to cover that. That is not a good... That is definitely not a good angle. And the speed is just as bad. So Junior has, effectively, no presence at T, as it were. Unless you just really got that meter game snowballed, and you've got your opponent panicked, and they're not gonna know, and they don't know what to do about you sitting here. Unless you're really that far deep into their heads, they're not gonna be able to really flinch at your offense, unfortunately. So which means that Junior is kind of awkward because he has to sit back here, which, don't get me wrong, baseline isn't the worst thing, but it also just means that he's not getting that natural offensive pressure that a lot of other characters can get by moving forward. In this game, moving forward is very good. There, that was about as fast as I could hit that top spin because I got like 2 seconds worth of charge on it. That situation doesn't come up too often. And even if it did, a wiser player that is not the CPU would know how to block it. Because it didn't really angle that hard, despite how much power it had. And my single tap option would have been pretty bad. It would have been pretty raunchy from this angle. There you can see it doesn't really go that far off. So Junior, kind of a struggle bus when it comes to getting any sort of offensive opening, which you need in this game. Most characters will not get by just playing pure defense unless your name is Waluigi. In standard mode specifically. Even Waluigi can't get away with that in simple. But as you can see, Mario's not going to be two-phased. I know it's an AI, but this would go for any real player too. And that Junior just can't open the opponent up. So, in comparison to what Junior was, this current version of Junior is just a former shell of really what he was. Because you get no angles, no power, no scoring potential. None of his shots really stand out. They nerfed just about everything about him. In one patch, he went from the king of the court to the prince of nothing, pretty much. For lack of better term. For a defensive, his lunge is one of the worst in the game. That wasn't a good example, but if I ever have to lunge, do you see how long it takes me for it to be actionable again after hitting that? It takes Junior forever if he lunges to actually get back into the game. And it's very bad on manual lunge, too. I'm gonna try and proc it. It's gonna be pretty hard, but but if you ever manual lunge as this character, if you screw up and you lunge, you're in for a world of hurt. Because you're just gonna be sitting there, a sitting duck with nothing else to do. A sitting Junior in a car. You gotta take that car to the mechanic. So in conclusion, Junior, not really the terror that he used to be. His angles are neutered. His shot power, neutered. His mobility, they also hit his mobility. He's not that fast unless you get like a second of windup. His reach was also nerfed. It used to be ridiculous. Anybody that played this game on release would tell you that Junior just actually sat right here in the center of the court and caught everything. Of course, the CPU is doing an excellent job helping me demonstrate. But in today's meta, not too strong, not too terrible. He's definitely been taken down a peg or 5, honestly. He went from a top 1 character to a bottom 5. Let's be honest, it's probably better that way. considering the amount of terror that this game put us through by releasing Junior in that state. So, you know, I'm just gonna let Mario have this. By all means, Mario, take your victory lap. You defeated the king. You defeated the prince. You'll be exiting stage right. And thank you all for watching. And I will see you soon on the next Hooky Hour. Bye!